Alright, hello and welcome to my official 2022 midterm Senate predictions as of the 26th of October. To start off with, we have the safe Senate seats for the Republican Party. In no particular order, you have Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma Special, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky, Indiana, Alabama, South Carolina, and of course Alaska. I would like to note that in Alaska, Murkowski is backed by a coalition of Alaskan Democrats, Independents, and moderate Republicans, and her opponent is actually another Republican due to the state's relatively new ranked choice voting and jungle primary system that has recently come into contention. He has the safe Senate seats for the Democratic Party, on the other hand, and once again, no particular order: Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, Vermont, Connecticut, Maryland, Hawaii, and of course New York. Now, on to the actually, at least semi-competitive, likely Republican state. So firstly, we have Iowa. So in Iowa, Chuck Grassley is a relatively strong incumbent, and in previous election cycles in which he's been up for re-election, even in relatively competitive ones, he's formally won by double digits. However, it interestingly seems as if his opponent, Mike Franken, is tapping into the hearts and minds of a lot of former Grassley voters. Although Grassley isn't obviously geriatric like a fair few of the older members of the Senate, the fact that he is 89 years old certainly isn't doing him any favors among Iowan voters. Recently, a poll was released by the most reputable polling organization in Iowa, the Des Moines Register. This poll had Grassley up by just 3 points. The same polling organization had Grassley up by 8 points in July. While some will disregard this poll as simply an outlier, I'm not going to. And while other organizations predicted that Trump would win Iowa by 1 or 2 points in 2020, an absurd miscalculation, by the way, the Des Moines Register predicted Trump would win by 7 points, which results in a margin of error of just 1.2 points. These guys are clearly doing something right. Ultimately, I think that Grassley will slightly outperform that poll and will win by 4 to 6 points. As such, I'm placing Iowa into the likely Republican category. Next, Utah. Here, you once again have a Republican incumbent facing off a challenger, except this time, the challenger isn't a Democrat. Mike Lee is facing off Evan McMullin, an independent candidate who is backed by Utah Democrats and who have chosen not to field a candidate and have instead backed Evan McMullin. He also received support from a fair few independents and even some moderate Republicans. In the 2016 presidential election, McMullin got 21.54% of the votes in Utah, just 5.92% less than Hillary Clinton. In 2016, Trump won the state by a plurality. If you combine Clinton's votes and McMullin's votes, you would have beat Trump. Many Republicans with traditional values in Utah thought Trump was off-putting, but didn't want to vote for a Democrat. Though Utah is trending left, it's likely that many of the folks that supported McMullin in 2016 will vote for Lee instead, as Trump is not on the ballot this year. As such, I believe that the GOP will win by 8 to 12 points, putting this squarely in the likely Republican category. Next is Florida. Besides DeSantis, Rubio is likely the strongest Republican in Florida politics at the moment. Thanks to his aggressive pro-America foreign policy, he is the Cuban vote, a critical vote in Florida, under lock and key. Couple this with the fact that Florida is trending to the right, and it's easy to see why a Rubio win is considered by many to be a foregone conclusion. However, you can't count out the Democrats so quickly, especially not in this contentious former swing state. As of 2022, the Democratic Party had 4.96 million registered voters in Florida to the GOP's 5.259 million. While Democrats have lost roughly 300,000 registered voters since 2020, the GOP has gained 30,000. The rest have gone back to being independents. There are nearly 4 million independents in Florida, and if Democrats can capture the majority, Val Demings would handily beat Rubio. However, thanks to the national environment shift towards Republicans and the fact that the majority of new Floridians are Republican, that's an unlikely possibility. I believe that Rubio will do similarly to his 2016 performance where he swept Florida by 8 points, making this race a likely Republican. And one more thing that I think is interesting that I'm going to note before we move on to the next state, though it is, I'm warning you, entirely unrelated to the topic of the video, but it does have to do with Florida. When it comes to ballot referendums, Florida is sort of an inverse to California. California tends to be center or tilt right on ballot referendum policies, but still vote for the Democratic Party by a safe margin when it comes to elections. Florida, on the other hand, tends to vote to the left on policies that make it onto a ballot referendum, but still vote for Republicans in candidate elections. An example of this is the minimum wage referendum in 2020, which passed with the support of more than 60% of Floridians. It will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025. It's just interesting to me to see that so many people have such a disconnect between the policies they support and the party they support. Continuing on, we have the likely Democrat states, of which there is just one, Colorado. Ever since Obama won the state in 2008, this mountainous state in the Rockies has absolutely bolted to the left. That's what makes it a likely state for Democrats. No matter what Republican strategists will tell you, it's a near impossibility that the Republican candidate, John O'Dea, will beat incumbent Democrat Senator Michael Bennet. This is a state Biden won by 14 points, and I have no trouble believing that Bennet will win it by at least 7 to 9 points, if not more, putting it just within the likely category, but on the verge of the safe category. Alright, now here we get to the actually interesting states, the ones you want to hear about, and the ones that don't have any de facto winner, starting with the lean Republican states. Now first, we have Wisconsin. Though Ron Johnson is perceived by many to be far more radical than he used to be in previous election cycles, such as 2016, his opponent, Mandela Barnes, is considered by Wisconsinites to be possibly even more off his rockers. Then again, this pivotal swing state is one prone to electing ideologues, so perhaps this won't hurt either of them. Ron Johnson is regarded by many to be out of step with his state on key issues such as abortion, LGBTQ rights, and other issues, and Barnes' willingness to support policies such as defunding the police will not bode well for him. While the white working class and rural areas of Wisconsin trend towards the Republican Party, the fact that Wisconsin is a very secular state prevents the 80-20 split in the favor of the GOP that we see in other rural areas around the country. Instead, rural areas here tend to split roughly 60-40 for the GOP, all while Democrats are improving their margins in suburban Wisconsin. This is one of the first races I'm covering that both parties have heavily invested in. However, at the end of the day, I think Ron Johnson will still pull out a win by 2 to 3 points. And an interesting note here is that, as always, the economy is the most important issue this cycle. Interestingly followed this cycle, and this is new, by abortion. And that's due to the Dobbs v. Jackson case, which overturned Roe v. Wade naturally. The economy being the number one issue hurts Dems nationwide, and the abortion issue helps them, which is interesting. Next, we have North Carolina. This is Nevada, but for Republicans. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, as you'll see in a bit, Nevada always enjoys electing Democrats by roughly 2 to 3 points, so we'll split it down the middle and call it 2.5. North Carolina has that obsession, but for the GOP. In recent years, all Democrat candidates for significant office elected statewide in North Carolina have failed by a slim margin, except for current Governor Roy Cooper and former Democratic President Barack Obama in his landslide 2008 victory. A few of the statewide Democrats were elected along with Obama in 2008, but as far as I'm aware, they all lost their re-election bids in subsequent years. Ted Budd is the Republican running to fill the open seat left by outgoing Senator Richard Burr. He is solidly on the right side of the Republican Party, in contrast to Burr. Regardless, his opponent Cherry Beasley is on the left of her party and has taken criticism for her stances on policing, similar to Barnes from Wisconsin. This isn't a blue wave year, and the 538 polling average has Budd up by 2.6 points. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he meets or exceeds that. Due to all this, I'm putting this race into the lean Republican category. Next, we have all of the lean Democratic states. So firstly, we have Nevada. And remember what I said about North Carolina being the Nevada, but for Republicans? Well, here we are at the original, Nevada, but for Nevada. These lovely people have a tendency to elect Democrats by just under 3 points time and time again, especially in recent years. I'm aware that the polls may have Laxalt, the Republican candidate, up by a couple points, and you may also know that. Hence why you might be hearing this and asking, why is he putting Nevada in the lean Democrat category? Well, from Harry Reid to Joe Biden, Democrats have consistently outperformed the polling organizations in Nevada. Both both thanks to the Reed machine, which helps Nevada have nearly 80% voter turnout, and the fact that Nevada Hispanics are regarded as harder to poll than other Nevada groups due to a multitude of factors. And it just turns out that Nevada Hispanics heavily favor the Democratic Party, and by a significant margin. According to exit polling, nearly 75% of Nevada Latinos voted for Biden in 2020. Democrats are hoping that they outperform the polls as usual in Nevada, and I believe they will. As such, I'm saying that incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto will win her re-election bid and defeat her challenger, Adam Laxalt, by more than 1.5 points. Next, we have New Hampshire. While Maggie Hassan, the incumbent, won by less than a point in 2016, New Hampshire has moved to the left since 2016, in an era where Trump has alienated quite a few traditional conservatives. During their search for a nominee to pit against Hassan, the Republican Party offered the spot to Sununu, who I believe could have won the race, but he flat out refused. Eventually, the party settled on General Don Bolduc, who is far more to the right compared to Sununu. During the primaries, he denied the idea that Joe Biden was the rightful winner of the presidential election, claiming it was stolen. He has since changed his stance to being unsure, quote-unquote, who won the election. But these sorts of far-right policies aren't going to be popular in a state that voted for Biden by roughly 7 points. Indeed, the polls agree with my analysis and have Hassan up by 5 points at the moment, though I do expect Bolduc to improve by a little bit more. As such, I'm ranking this state as lean Democrat and expect Hassan to win by 4.5 points or more. Arizona is our third to last state in this category, and Arizona is a state that's practically flown towards the Democrats in recent years. Like New Hampshire, it's a state where Democratic gains in the suburbs and Trump's alienation of college-educated voters and Romney voters has helped the Democrats massively. In 2020, incumbent Senator Mark Kelly beat McSally by roughly 2 points, an impressive margin that outperformed Biden by about 1.7 points. Democrat gains in Maricopa County have made all the difference. If Democrats keep improving in Arizona, this could be the next Colorado or Virginia for them. Folks, candidate quality really matters. Mark Kelly is a former astronaut and a strong incumbent who, as I stated, outperformed Biden. His opponent, Blake Masters, however, is rather far right, which does not help him in Arizona's sprawling suburbs. Masters is a rather far right guy, which just doesn't help him in Arizona. Maybe he'd have a shot if he moves to the deep south, but frankly, I just don't see him pulling off a victory here. I'm rating this race as lean Democrat, with Kelly winning by 2 points or greater. As our final state in this category, we have Georgia. Thanks in no small part to the turnout effort targeted at black Georgians in recent years, combined with the state's population increase, this once ruby red state is now a prime target for Democrats. Indeed, in 2020, Democrats won the state on both the presidential and Senate cycles. Now, a product of the 2020 Georgia special Senate election, Reverend Raphael Warnock has to defend his seat in a re-election bid against former WWE wrestler Herschel Walker. Both of these candidates are African American, which could have interesting implications on the black vote. Key word being could. To tell you the truth, I don't think it will. Warnock is a strong incumbent, and this is another race where the Republicans have chosen to run a weak candidate. In recent weeks, the Walker campaign has been embroiled in scandal. His own family has come out against him, claiming that he allegedly abused them. Allegedly, he paid for a woman to get an abortion. This is a candidate that has repeatedly railed against abortion, and it wouldn't be surprising if Georgians hold his apparent hypocrisy against him. Furthermore, many find his performance in the recent debate to be just embarrassing. However, it's unclear if that debate will have any impact on the Senate election. I believe that Warnock will win by 2 points or slightly less, putting this just on the verge of being a lean Democrat state, which is how I'll rank it. We are now at the tilt Democrat states, of which there are 2. These are the rankings I'm going to get the most heat for. Okay, firstly, we have Pennsylvania. At first, I was thinking of putting this into the lean Democratic category. That's just not happening. Fetterman's stroke has simply hurt him too much. Have you seen the debate? I haven't. Why would I waste an hour watching pure, unadulterated torture? No thank you. But I have seen a few clips of it, and it was a train wreck for John Fetterman, the Democrat candidate for Senate who is competing against the Republican candidate TV Dr. Mehmet Oz for this open seat. Oz has had quite a few scandals of his own, however. One that's currently making the rounds is the allegation that during his time as a medical researcher, his experiments reportedly killed over 300 dogs, including an entire litter of puppies. Will that hurt him? Only time can tell. Otherwise, Oz is a relatively moderate Republican, especially compared to the governor candidate the GOP is running in Pennsylvania. It seems likely that he will vastly outperform the aforementioned governor candidate by a large margin, but not by enough to win him this seat. An interesting thing to note is that Fetterman is trying to improve Democrat margins in white working class areas of Pennsylvania, while Oz is poised to improve Republican margins in the suburbs. Unfortunately, it's impossible to predict whether or not this will be a winning strategy for Fetterman. After taking all these factors into consideration, I'm going to say that Fetterman will win, but just barely, likely by under 1.25 points. And the most controversial of all, Ohio. Look, many of you are going to see this prediction, take one look at it, and think the entire video is a wishcast, and then disregard the entire video. However, I'm urging you not to do that. Let me make my case here, and maybe I'll convince you as to why I think Tim Ryan will narrowly pull out a win in this swing state. Well, Ohio is a race between Democrat Tim Ryan, a representative in the United States Congress, and Republican J.D. Vance, who is noted as the author of Hillbilly Elegy and a former San Francisco venture capitalist. Candidate quality matters, and in this case, it matters a lot. J.D. Vance just isn't a good fit for Ohio, and that's shown in the neck-to-neck polls and the unofficial vibes of the race. You just need to be a certain type of Democrat to win in Ohio these days. For example, Sherrod Brown is a Democrat who recently won a Senate election there in 2018, and his margins with the white working class were quite good. And Tim Ryan has a similar attitude and set of policies to Sherrod Brown. This isn't supposed to be a competitive race, and if the Republican Party had picked a good candidate, this likely wouldn't be. However, Tim Ryan is also just a really good candidate for Democrats, which of course helps. He will potentially be able to reverse and partially revert the Democrat bleeding among the white working class in Ohio, while maintaining the Democratic gains in the Ohio suburbs and cities. And that's all he'll need to pull off an extremely narrow victory. Unfortunately for Tim, his win won't be as big as Brown's in 2018, where Democrats won the state by 6.8 points. I predict he will win the state by anywhere from 1/10 of a point to 1 point, which, although it's a slim margin, would be a shocking upset victory for the Democratic Party. And here we are, we're at the end of the video now. I'm just going to do some quick unscripted thoughts here. Firstly, if Democrats somehow also manage to keep the House, which is a near impossibility, but not impossible, it could theoretically happen. If they manage to do that, that would probably make this one of the most consequential Congresses in recent history, as Fetterman and Ryan winning their respective elections would allow Democrats to repeal the filibuster if they so wish to. That would be monumental and allow them to pass pretty much whatever legislation they could get both the majority of House Democrats and the majority of Senate Democrats to agree to. Now, I'm well aware these predictions are quite good for the Democratic Party, but really, what were you expecting watching a video from a channel with Democrat in the name? Come on now. In all seriousness though, I did try and be impartial, so please like the video to help it get it promoted through the YouTube algorithm, and if you really enjoy this, and I would very much appreciate it, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when I next post a video. If this video reaches 10 likes, I will be doing governor prediction, where I go over my predictions for the governor's races this cycle.